RaccoonMan and Draconic Sorceress presents the Curio Archives. Episode 2 Antique. Khninn. Archivist. Whatever, I'm coming in. Christ, how can he breathe in here? What's this? Oh great, a puzzle to decipher. Had to go out for a bit. Is this handwriting or cryptogram? Something about a statement. This one on the desk probably wants me to record it. Oh great, left the recorder running. Waste of tape. Does he seriously record in a normal-ass office chair? Just do it all. Okay. Good to be back with Dad. Had you all these years, huh, bud? God, Orpheus, you are losing it. First talking to a chair, now yourself. Okay, let's see here. Orpheus Valor, Assistant Archivist at the Curio Institute, recording statement of Marianne Howler. Original statement given 23rd December 1991 and received by mail. Put to tape 9th August 2022. Statement regarding an antique. Statement begins. I always liked antiques. There's something so interesting about them. It's like peering back into the past. Back where I used to live in Garden City, that's in New York, by the way, in case you didn't know, there was this little antique shop called The Rabbit Hole. It was run by an old lady named Coella Leporide, though she always just wanted everyone to call her Rabbit. And thinking back on it, I don't think she was actually that old. I think I just assumed that because I was young and she had white hair. We didn't have a lot of money growing up, and I'm sure I don't need to tell you how expensive antiques are, so we never really bought anything. But every month or so, I'd go into that old antique shop and just browse for hours. And if it wasn't busy, which usually it wasn't, Rabbit would be happy to tell me about her various items for sale. Though I think she made most of that up. It was weird. I'd ask her about a chair, and she'd tell me something like, "Oh, that's the ancient throne of King Midas. You can tell by the gold accents. Those are the lines he'd trace with his fingers whenever he got bored." It was always something silly and outlandish like that, but she said it with such sincerity and such little hesitation that it was hard not to believe her. Even now, I struggle to imagine that she just made that stuff up on the spot. But who knows, maybe she was a secret fantasy novelist and this was all just her established lore. Anyways, month after month I'd go into that little store, and there would always be something new for me to learn about, to discover. One month it might be a mirror that Rabbit obtained from Dracula's castle in Transylvania, that reflected an image so brilliant because it hadn't been worn down by having to reflect anyone else. Since, vampires don't have reflections. Or maybe the next month it would be a necklace worn by the Greek hero Achilles that granted him strength in the Trojan War and was given to him by his lover Patroclus. It was fun, and so I kept going, and going, and going until one day it was gone. I assumed it just wasn't profitable enough for Rabbit to keep paying the rent for her building, and I'd almost forgotten about the place until 2 years ago, in 1989. I had been sent down to Jay, Vermont for a business trip. I work in advertising, and we're trying to close a deal with the J Peak Ski Resort to help them rebrand, make it less of a historical place and more of a reason to come to J. There's a lot of ski resorts in Vermont, and so you kind of have to do a lot to make yours stand out. I was driving back to my hotel from the meeting I had been in when I saw something strange. Right off the side of Route 242, there was a tiny, cozy little cabin with a sign above the door that read, "The Rabbit Hole, Antiques and Curiosities." I recognized it instantly and swerved off the road into its tiny, I wouldn't really call it a parking lot, just a parking space. It was probably reckless driving. I don't think I used my blinker, but that didn't really matter. What mattered was seeing what was in that cabin. I parked and walked in, braced myself, and sure enough, when I opened the door, it was all there, exactly as I had remembered it. Rabbit was there at the front desk, and her eyes lit up, a grin stretching across her face. "Mary," she said. "Oh, it's been so long since I've seen you, my little wolf." I don't think I mentioned it, but that was a nickname she had given me. She liked referring to people as animals, and I assumed she had given me the name Little Wolf because of my last name. It was also nostalgic, but also a little bit unsettling. I had never spoken a word, I didn't even open my mouth, and she recognized me almost 10 years later. I asked her about it, and she just brushed it off, saying that she never forgot a face, but I don't think I have to explain to you that my face now doesn't look the same as when I was 12. But I ignored it, and I started to look around. I knew that this time I'd have to buy something as a thank you for everything she'd done for me all those years. And it so happened that something did catch my eye. It was a lowball cocktail glass, the kind you might use for an old-fashioned or just a hard spirit. But it had this beautiful silver pattern weaving its way up the sides of it like a spider web. I knew I had to have it the moment I laid eyes upon it, but just to humor her, I asked Rabbit what its deal was. She told me it was from an old friend, that there were others like it, but she couldn't ever sell them all in a set, so all the others were gone, and this was the only one she had left. I bought it and said goodbye and thank you to Rabbit. She nodded and stared me down, unblinking, and told me, "Mr. Hymnia would be very happy to see that that glass ended up with a person like you." And then I left. I just assumed it was more of her weird lore and went home for the night. By the time I got back to the hotel room, it was late, and so I decided to take out the scotch that I had brought with me, especially now that I had a new glass to drink it from. I sat down, poured the glass, and raised it to my lips. It had a weird sort of finality to it, like it was all in slow motion. It was asking me, "Do you really want to do this?" But I couldn't see anything wrong with it, so I took a drink. It wasn't the bitter, smooth taste of a regular glass of scotch. It was almost sickly sweet, and felt like 1,000 tiny legs scuttling down my throat. I gagged. I almost threw up right then and there. I decided that whatever was happening wasn't worth my time. I poured out my glass and went to sleep. I woke up with a splitting headache. It felt like all of my bones were made of paper and my body was 2,000 pounds. I had the kind of hangover you only get when you're blackout drunk. Then I looked over and noticed that the bottle of scotch was significantly more empty than it had been the night before. This has been going on for 2 years. First, it would just happen overnight, but then I started waking up drinking, feeling whatever alcohol was left in my house slide down my throat like a tsunami of sickly, sweet spiders. I thought at first I could beat it by just not having any alcohol in the house. Then I woke up one day with a glass of rat poison up against my lips. I've tried everything to get rid of it. I've tried smashing it, burying it, melting it. No matter what I do, I always wake up and it's right there on my kitchen counter. I don't know what else to do. I'm writing you this in the hopes you have something, anything that can help me. I don't know what to do. Statement ends. This certainly is a series of events that I do believe took place. Next to this file was some research that Adele did. It seems that Miss Howler would be arrested the next night on Christmas Eve, 1991, after killing a man in a drunk driving accident. Although her sentence was relatively short, she died in prison not even a month in, reportedly due to some form of organ failure. I find it hard to imagine that an ornate silver old-fashioned glass wasn't present in her cell. And record.
Oh, hey, what are you doing in here?
Just finishing up the statement she left for me to record. Why?
Oh, that was for fact-checking, not recording.
Well, can you really blame me? How was I supposed to tell what this says? It looks more like the Zodiac Killer left me a puzzle than my boss asking me to do some research.
Well, how do you know I'm not the Zodiac Killer?
Because the Zodiac Killer clearly gave a shit about what he was doing, and I can't imagine you'd ever have the ambition to set up elaborate ciphers and puzzles when you can't go 3 minutes without a smoke break.
Either way, I'm fine with you recording statements. Less work for me, you know?
That speaks volumes of your character. While on the topic, my dad, the previous archivist, would not appreciate the way you're treating his workspace.
We can hash my work ethic out later. Could I have my desk back?
Fine. End recording. Figured I'd start recording my own tapes in case the same thing that happened to my dad happens to me. So, supplemental. This place is a mess. Statements strewn about everywhere, some not even in folders. My dad couldn't have left the place like this. It's most likely the result of the new archivist in charge, Khninn. Seeing the way he's left the place only further justifies to me that he doesn't deserve my position. I've seen him file maybe 1 or 2 statements, and in that time he's taken 3 smoke breaks. Not outside, mind you, just in the common room. The other assistant we're working with is Adele Simmons, who... she's fine. A little weird, but fine. She does her job well enough and isn't nearly as infuriating as Khninn. Though I swear we'd met before we started working the archives together, and she wasn't going by that name. Maybe she has a twin. And supplemental. The Curio Archives is a fan work created by RaccoonMan and Draconic Sorceress, based on the Magnus Archives by Rusty Quill. It combines characters who have made their home on this channel with the elaborate horror universe created by Jonathan Sims. Please support the official release on rustyquill.com and consider donating to their Patreon. This episode starred Deidre Mercer as Orpheus Valor and RaccoonMan as Khninn, the Archivist. Thanks for listening.